Welcome back to another episode of the Vendetta Sports Fantasy Show. I am Scott Logush here with Jackson Law. Jackson, how you doing?
Doing good today, man. Doing good. It's just you and me today.
Unfortunately, most of the regular crew couldn't really make it today, so got to deal with the two of us. So we're going to start with some
Gotta
news. Starting off with the Saints mini bubble for training camp. Bunch of Saints employees, staff, players, coaching staff. They're holding up in a hotel for training camp, and they kind of create their own little mini bubble. Jackson, what are your thoughts on this?
I mean, it's not a terrible idea. The bubble in the NBA is working as of right now. Still no confirmed cases, and they've gone through like 3 or 4 rounds of testing. I think like today was the last information we got from it. So it's not a bad idea. If more teams wanted to do it, kudos to them. I think it can help limit the number of cases that your team could get, and it could help limit the spread. I don't know the specifics of what they have, like what the rules are, like where they can and can't go, how they have to quarantine if they do leave their little mini bubble. But it's worth a shot because everyone's just kind of making this up as we go along.
Well, part of the making it up as they go along, this wasn't planned. It's just like people started doing it. Like Sean
Hmm.
Payton started doing it. Other players started doing it. And it's kind of like it's like voluntary workouts. It's like you don't have to do it, but you have to do it. It's not
Yeah,
mandatory, but it's one of those things where it's not mandatory, but it's kind of mandatory in the sense of players are going to be like, dude, come on. Like,
yeah, and you
just
don't you
do it.
don't want to be you don't want to be the one guy that is just living a normal life, gets COVID, and then like 2 weeks later when you're doing full contact practices, and you start spreading COVID to everyone else.
Exactly. Like, you don't want to be that one guy who's not doing it because, if Drew Brees, Cam Jordan, and Michael Thomas are doing it and you're this fifth round pick, you're like, oh, shit, I should probably do this. Because here's the thing with the rookies. I assume they're fine doing it because they don't really have a house yet. They don't have, like, a living area set up yet in New Orleans. So it's also just temporary living. So if you don't make the team, you don't have to go through the hassle of putting a house back on the market. You just have to
Mhm.
check out of your hotel room. So I think it's a great idea, and we'll see how it goes. And then another piece of news, I reported this a couple days ago when Stafford tested positive. Turns out that was a false positive. It was a positive test sandwiched in between multiple negatives, and it goes to show that testing isn't 100% accurate. Jackson, what does this mean?
Yeah, I know it's been reported a lot in the news that a lot of people have gotten false positives. I mean, I guess it's good news for Lions fans. Stafford is obviously going to be the best. There's no one else in that locker room that can be quarterback right now. So, and paying Stafford all that money, so I guess you might as well play him. But it just goes to show how much of a mess this upcoming season is. Because what if someone tests positive? Like, what if it's like they have a short week or something, like they have a Thursday night game and they test positive on Wednesday, but then like they go through a couple more days of testing, they miss that Thursday night game, and then it turns out they didn't have COVID after all. And it could be someone like on the special teams unit, or what if it's like a core player that's a part of that team. It's this season's just going to be a mess, and we're just going to have to deal with it as best as we can as fans, and then the players and the coaches will have to deal with it as best as they can.
One thing I'm going to say about this, what happens when someone gets a false negative? So they test negative, and then they're in the locker room during a practice where they can infect at least 50 people by themselves. Like, they're just shedding virus everywhere. What if this happens on game day? Where,
Hmm.
again, a player gets a false negative as opposed to a false positive. Because with a false positive, it's not as bad as a false negative.
Yeah.
Because false positive, you're not spreading the virus. With a false negative, you are very well spreading the virus if you're in the locker room, within meetings, practices, workouts, and during a game. Because if you're playing a game, you can infect over 100 people in a single game. Because there's 53 people on the roster. There's at least 10 coaches, whether it be position coaches, coordinators, head coach, special teams coordinators, anything along that line. you can infect 100, 120 people in the course of a game. If you're one person, you get a false negative. So I just hope that by the time the season rolls around, testing's more accurate so we don't have a false negative shut down the NFL, because they can't do a bubble like the NBA or the NHL because there's too many people. This is before the season started. You can't just take the however many playoff teams there are and just say, all right, you're just going to be holed up here. You can't do that because you have to do all 32 teams because it's a fresh season. So that's at least 53 players plus about, we'll say, 8 to 10 coaches per team plus front office. Like, that's just not plausible. There's so many more people on an NFL team than an NBA or NHL team because you need 10 players to cover an NBA court. You need 12 to cover a ice hockey arena. You need 11 for one side of the field in football. Like, a bubble approach, especially now, isn't plausible or realistic for the NFL. And if it comes to where too many people are getting infected and the season has to be shut down, I don't see them being able to realistically move into a bubble simply because there's just too many people.
I agree.
All right, so a little bit of news out of the way. We're going to get into the fantasy show. Boom or bust. Players that have the potential to be a fantasy star and carry your team, but can also just stink and drag you down the entire way. Jackson, we'll start with you. Who's your first boom or bust candidate?
All right, so my first one, I'm swinging for the fences on this one. I'm going with a big name. Bust Aaron Rodgers. Told you I'm swinging for the fences. All right, so he had a really down year last year, and you could say that was because of increased production from the running back position or the lack of wide receivers that he's had. But again, he doesn't have any receivers this year outside of Adams. He has no one. He's 36 years old. He's getting up there in age. We've especially seen how age has hurt someone like Tom Brady's arm, which I think Rodgers has always had the better arm than Brady anyway. But I still think his age is going to hurt him. He still has a good touchdown to interception ratio last year, but the numbers were down pretty low. He only threw 26 touchdowns last season. And he threw 20 less attempts overall last season in 2019 than he did in 2018 season. But he was about 450 yards less on his overall yardage for last season than he was for the season before that. So I just don't trust Aaron Rodgers compared to where he's at on some draft boards. I don't see him being the guy that he used to be that's going to be carrying your fantasy team. I think that if you draft him too high, you don't take a better quarterback, then you're going to be suffering if Aaron Rodgers is your QB1.
I like this because with Aaron Rodgers, it's Devontae Adams or bust. Because Devin Funchess opted out. The Packers didn't draft a single wide receiver in this class. They're screwed. Plus, the team isn't built to run through Aaron Rodgers anymore. They're trying to build it based off the run game because they got their asses kicked by a strong run game. So they're like, we want that. We want to do that to other people. And that's what they're building their team towards. They're not building it like when Aaron Rodgers won MVP, when they won the Super Bowl. They're not building it to rely on Aaron Rodgers' arm. They're building their team to rely on the running backs, and they want to try to mitigate Aaron Rodgers' role in that offense even more. But I can also see he's pissed off, and he just comes out swinging, throwing darts down the field. I can see him being a very productive quarterback, but it's also extremely likely, and hence the name boom or bust, he just stinks fantasy-wise because he's not going to get the same amount of attempts, and he has no one to throw to.
And obviously the Packers believe that he's on the tail end of his career because they drafted Jordan Love. They have drafted his replacement, which they did before with Brett Favre. When Brett Favre was the starter, they drafted Aaron Rodgers, and they sat Aaron for a couple years, and then he took over. It looks like they're going to try to do the same thing with Jordan Love. So even the organization is starting to give up on Rodgers.
And here's the thing, with Favre, I got that because Aaron Rodgers was talked about being the number one overall pick. He slipped all the way to the mid-20s. You have to do that. Also, we were in Favre retirement watch. He's just like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to play again. And then the Packers are like, all right, well, we're going to be ready for whenever you do retire. We're going to draft Aaron Rodgers. We're going to be ready. You're not going to completely blindside us. And then we all know what happened. Favre ended up playing till in his 40s. Not very late into his 40s, but he played till he was 40. He had a great year with the Vikings at 39, and the wheels just absolutely fell off with that second year with the Minnesota Vikings. The wheels just fell off. Mm-hmm. And I get what the Packers are trying to do, but Aaron Rodgers has been vocal about wanting to play well into his 40s. And that's not going to happen in Green Bay anymore. Like, I'm sorry, Packers fans, it's just not, because the timeline of the Jordan Love pick doesn't match up with Aaron Rodgers' career if he plays into his 40s.
Now, it could be different a couple years from now. Let's say 2 years from now, they finally let him go, and they're like, hey, Jordan Love is our guy. Thanks for the Super Bowl and all the memories. We'll see you later. If he goes to a team that has receivers, then maybe we switch it around. Maybe he's a really good pick because he'll have receivers finally. He's really hadn't had any except for Adams, but he's only got the one Adams in Green Bay.
Well, Aaron Rodgers also led the league in throwaways last year. Or if he didn't lead, he was very high up there, but I'm pretty sure he led the league in throwaways. And that's just not going to give you fancy production. I'd rather have Jameis Winston, who's throwing 30 picks, but he's also throwing 5,000 yards.
Yeah, I think the average points per game for Rodgers, it was around 17, which is pretty low for someone of his pedigree.
Yeah, it's not going to cut it for fantasy. So my first pick is also a quarterback getting up there in age, Ben Roethlisberger. He's coming off elbow injury. It was not Tommy John. All right, he talked with reporters yesterday. It was not Tommy John. No name for it, but it's not Tommy John. And he's old and he's coming off that injury, so it's very likely that he's not going to be able to be a top 5 fantasy quarterback. But where do you think he ranks in 2018, his last healthy season?
His last healthy season?
Yes.
Gosh.
This was the Mahomes MVP year.
Mahomes? Oh. I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Take a guess.
Was he in the top part of the league?
Oh, yeah.
That's what I thought.
He was the third best fantasy quarterback.
Third. I was going to say top 5.
He was behind Mahomes and Matt Ryan. We've seen Big Ben put up fantasy darling seasons. He had the Jameis Winston year just cut the interceptions in half. We could see him do that again. The Steelers have been loading up their wide receiver room. They've got Juju Smith-Schuster. They have James Washington. They have Deontay Johnson. And they have Chase Claypool. They also added Eric Ebron. Big Ben could – there's just such a wide range of outcomes where he could stink, he could be mediocre, he could be amazing, and we just don't know.
I agree. That's a good pick as a bust. It's tough. Was it on his throwing arm?
Yes, it was
his injury. Arm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That pretty much puts the nail in the coffin. I mean, for his age, for that kind of surgery, that's totally not Tommy John surgery, but it's his elbow, his throwing arm. So it's, yeah. I don't trust Big Ben to put up big fantasy numbers. There's no way he has a top 10 or probably even a top 15 finish as a fantasy QB. So yeah, that's a good pick. That's a good pick.
All right. Do you want to go ahead with your next pick?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll be positive with this one. I'll go for boom. I got bust, boom, and bust. Those are my 3. But for my one boom pick, I've got Jerry Jeudy, the rookie wide receiver out of Alabama, to the Broncos. And my reasoning behind that is because basically by default, Cortland Sutton is their number 1 wide receiver. But even with kind of being the number one guy, he only had 125 targets last year, and they've added some. The Broncos, as a team, have added more to their receiving core, with Jerry Jeudy being kind of like the prize of their new receiving core. Drew Lock looked really good to finish out the year last year. If he can take that, which this pick does kind of depend on Drew Lock taking a decent step forward. It doesn't have to be a ginormous leap forward, and he has to start putting up, start playing up there with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and the other top quarterbacks in the league. But if he continues on the trend with what we saw at the end of last year, I think Jeudy is going to be his number one or a very close number two target. And so if you're picking up rookies in like a rookie draft, then you definitely get good value out of him. If you're doing a league like what Trey does, where it's the auction league and you take rookie picks, he'd definitely be one that I would look for.
I like this pick because the Broncos have shown and given us every indication that they are going to be building this pass-happy offense to try and outscore the Chiefs. And when you play the Chiefs twice a year, you have to score a lot of points. All the receivers are going to be eating in that game against the Chiefs. And Jerry Jeudy's easily going to step in as at least the number two receiver in Denver. And Drew Lock was great last year, but not with Courtland Sutton. Courtland Sutton was not a good wide receiver in terms of production when Drew Lock was filling in. So I can definitely see Jerry Jeudy taking those targets that went elsewhere. And I can see Jerry Jeudy stepping in, and he could possibly become the number one guy. It's not crazy. I'm not going to say he will, but it's a real possibility, and he has the ability to just step in with his skill set, make a huge impact both for the Broncos and for your fantasy teams. So my next boomer bust candidate is going to be Chase Claypool, rookie wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And
going homer picks for the first two, I see.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's because I have no idea what the fuck is going to happen. So Chase Claypool has all the size and measurables that you want. He's a big body receiver and he's fast. He can make big plays, but he could very well be the fourth receiver on the depth chart. He could be behind Juju Smith-Schuster, James Washington, and Deontay Johnson, simply because they're more veteran. They're veterans, not by much, by 3 years, 2 years, 1 year. But they're still been in the league. They know what they're doing. They've been in that system for their entire career. Chase Claypool is his rookie walking, and typically rookie wide receivers don't start off well. They'll pick it up later in the year, but they're still learning the nuances of the NFL. And without a preseason or training camp, that could really stunt Chase Claypool's development for this year. So if you make me pick boom or bust, I'm going to have to pick bust because he's going to be buried on that depth chart. And while I love him for the future, I don't love him this year because lack of training camp, being cut down, no preseason at all. It's going to be a real trial by fire. And I don't know if the Steelers are going to be willing to bench Washington, Johnson, or Smith-Schuster for a rookie.
Yeah, that's tough being buried on the bench. And then, of course, going back to your first pick, to Big Ben, we don't know how Big Ben is going to be. And he may rely more on the receivers that he knows than he would a brand new rookie receiver that he, like you said, doesn't have a training camp or preseason to really work out with. So, yeah, that could really hurt his production as a rookie.
We talked about with Aaron Rodgers. Big Ben is the type of person to say, fuck you, I'm not throwing to you.
Yeah.
Like, he's just the type of person to do that, and I'm not happy to say that. It's just fact. He's one of those guys where if he's mad, or if he's frustrated with something, he doesn't like something, he's going to make it known, and he's going to do something.
Yeah, he's not afraid to do that. Isn't there – he's kind of like Tom Brady, where it's like every Monday or just like every time after a game, he's got like a radio show that he calls into, or he's like a guest on, and he just like spills the beans on everything that's happening in the locker room.
Yeah, and like, I don't really like that. Reports have said he's stopped doing that show. I'm not sure if that was last season or going into this season, but even then, like, there have been stories about how he intentionally fumbled a handoff, and when the coaches were calling runs instead of taking a knee. Like when you hear stories about that, regardless of if they're true or not, the fact that people are thinking of those types of stories and thinking that it's a realistic possibility just goes to show some character concerns. And, Big Ben's much older now. He's a veteran. But he's still that type of guy where he's going to try to do things his way. And look, sometimes it works. Sometimes it works when he refuses to let a play die, moves around in the pocket. And sometimes it just really screws him and the team. All right, you want to go ahead with your second pick?
All right, so my last pick it's another wide receiver, but it's a bust, and it's kind of an easy one. It's kind of a layup. It's Mike Evans. Mike Evans, brand new quarterback, Tom Brady. Brady doesn't throw it deep at all, if ever, not very much. And also you have the introduction of Gronk into the offense. Brady knows Rob Gronkowski very well, so he may rely heavily on him, especially early on in the season as everyone's trying to get comfortable. You also have Chris Godwin there, who he'll probably line up more in the slot, and that's going to be Brady's favorite target is the slot. And then, of course, you have the dump-offs to the running backs, which is another thing that Brady, since he won't throw downfield very much, is like an easy little out for him. So I just don't see Evans getting as many targets, especially deep, which is where his value has been in the past, especially with Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston wasn't afraid to chunk it deep and let Mike Evans go get it. And sometimes it bit them in the ass because Jameis Winston would throw so many TDs or interceptions. I mean, but other times Mike Evans would go grab those 50-50 balls and it turned into a big play, and that's where his fantasy value was in previous years. I just don't see him, especially with being. I think they've got him as like a top 10 wide receiver option right now. I just don't see him being that, and I'd stay as far away from him as I could.
I like this pick because part of what Bruce Arians said is that we're kind of going to cater to Brady. Hold on. We have someone else is calling in right now. Well, one thing I like about this pick is Brady just doesn't have the arm anymore to throw it downfield. And we got Trey in the house. Trey, how you doing there? Can you hear us? Trey, can you hear us? Fuck.
Experiencing technical difficulties.
Trey, can you hear us or no? Oh. Okay, there goes Trey. He just left. And my phone is ringing. We're just gonna let that go over here. What is Trey gonna be able to join? So is Trey not gonna be able to join then?
I don't see why you wouldn't be able to join.
Here he is.
Plus,
Is he in? Trey, how you doing? Can you hear us?
I think so. Can you hear me?
there he is. Yeah.
Apparently, I needed to type in some kind of password. So that's new.
That is very new. I just got a phone call from fucking political party about an election, so that's going on in the background right now.
Canadian politics.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. Jackson just gave his boomer bust candidate, typically leaning towards the bust side, Mike Evans. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think we've said this about 1,000 times. I don't trust Tom Brady, therefore I don't trust Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Don't have to spend a ton of time there. How many did you do? 2 or 1?
3.
That was Jackson's third. So we've both done 2. Jackson's done his third, and I'm about to give my third. And do you have anything else you want to say on Mike Evans?
Well, let me hear all the names, and then I'll just throw out some thoughts.
All right, Jackson.
Okay.
So give your first
so
two.
my first 2 were bust Aaron Rodgers and boom Jerry Jeudy.
Well, I guess the point of the segment I had was kind of players that you don't know could go either way. But, if you're going to declare a side, I like it. I'm good with that. With Rodgers, I agree with you, but I think I could be wrong. It just feels like their offense is changing. They draft a quarterback behind him. They don't trust him. They draft a running back in the second round. They want to run the ball. They draft a blocking tight end in the third round. It kind of seems like Matt LaFleur wants to be San Francisco. So, yeah, Rodgers is a guy I wouldn't touch. Judy, I kind of like too. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to side with you on that one, just because I think Drew Lock's going to have a big year. Scott, who are you two?
So I gave 2, and I didn't declare them one way or the other.
Okay.
I gave Big Ben and Chase Claypool.
Jesus, my God. All right, give your spirit. I'm not even entertaining this.
All right. So my third is going to be Cam Newton. Because like we said before, there are so many different outcomes because there's a chance he's not even the starter in New England. There's a chance that he's the starter and he just runs away with it and takes the league by storm. He's healthy. He's had foot surgery, shoulder surgery. There's a chance he could dominate. There's also a chance he can just absolutely flame out because I've said this before. I'm looking at his career lifespan and longevity as a running back, not as a quarterback, because the style of football he plays is very much like a running back where he's going to look for contact. He's going to look to run people over, and he's 6'5". He can do that. But, yes, got to plug the QZ and buy one from the store.
Buy one.
Buy one from the store. And Cam Newton, he loved – yes, great.
Buy a cup,
great
too. They're
placement.
coming out soon.
Coming out soon.
Those cups are fire. I can't wait to get one.
Yeah. Well, with Cam Newton, I can see him being so banged up and just brutally injured from the beating he's taken playing his brand of football that he can't throw the ball anymore because he's never been praised for his accuracy. Like, his accuracy has never been what made him Cam Newton. It's not what made him the MVP. His ability to run for yards, run for touchdowns, run people over, that's what made him as a player and especially what contributed to his MVP year. And he's losing that now. So, Trey, what are your thoughts?
Well, number one, we don't know if he's healthy. Number two, the weapons still stink. Number three, he's getting better coaching. Number four, we don't know if the offense is better or worse, but last year it was not good. Number five, it's a good defense, so he doesn't have to win shootouts. It can be a primary running attack. Number six, I think there's a chance he has running potential. Bill Belichick wants to use him in that capacity because this is a team, again, they don't have a lot of good weapons. So, yeah, you're right. I mean, totally up in the air there.
All right, so that wraps up our Boomer Bust segment.
You're not going to ask Jackson what he thinks? Rude.
Sorry, go ahead, Jackson.
Oh, you're fine, man. I'm just chilling back here. Long day. So, but I mean, I agree with you guys. I don't even think I have that much more to add. He's pretty up in the air. I think the last time I was on here, which I'm on here like once a month, so nothing runs together too much. But if I remember correctly, I think Trey and I both thought that Cam to the Patriots could make them, maybe make them a playoff team, and that Cam has potential to be a top 10 quarterback just because of the potential for Belichick to use him in the run. Belichick's a smart coach. He's going to find every way that he can to effectively maximize Cam and his abilities for the Patriots. And sometimes that may be a good thing, and sometimes it may not. Sometimes maybe Cam isn't as part of the game plan or the things that will get Cam scores. Maybe they get closer to the goal line and they're handing it off more than they are passing it, or instead of Cam running it in. So it's a 50-50 chance that he may do great, he may not, or maybe he's hot and cold depending on, going in week to week. So I don't know.
All right, anyone else have anything to say before we move on?
If we wait a little bit, I think Alex said he'd be available.
Well, I got the ultimate boomer bust, though.
Let's hear it.
Ultimate boomer bust. I don't think it can even be topped. And that man is Daniel Jones, quarterback of the New York Giants. Let's go around here. Scott, how many times did he fumble last year? What's your guess?
Fucking stupid amount. It was at least in the teens. Maybe in the 20s.
I'd say 12 or 15, somewhere in there.
Scott, quick.
Fucking 20.
He fumbled 18 times last year.
Oh,
12 starts. 12 starts. He also threw 12 interceptions. That's like 30 turnovers.
That's Jameis Winston.
That's Jameis Winston, but in 4 less starts.
And nowhere near as many touchdowns or yards.
Last year, though, there is a twist. We talked about this. 9 of 10 quarterbacks who were in the top 10 ran for over 200 yards. Daniel Jones was one of them. 23 touchdowns and 12 starts. Pretty good. Here's the question, though. His offensive coordinator is now Jason Garrett. His head coach is Joe Judge, special teams coach for the New England Patriots last year. God only knows what that's going to look like. I have no clue. And I don't think Pat Shurmur is a good head coach, but Jones at least put up numbers. Are we sure, people make fun of Jason Garrett, but, this could be ugly. They are my pick to not win a game. But on the other hand, maybe that's a good thing. Their defense is so bad, they're going to be trailing, and he's going to be putting up fourth quarter garbage time numbers. And here's the biggest one, because I think this matters. Last year, I believe that the Browns crumbled after week 1. They got punched in the mouth by Tennessee, and their season was over. Sometimes I do think those early season games matter for teams that, need confidence. Here's the season schedule for the Giants. Week 1, Pittsburgh. Pretty good defense. Week 2, Chicago. Week 3, San Francisco. They could be punched in the mouth 3 straight weeks. Daniel Jones could look unplayable, and this entire team crumbles. So, to me, and Daniel Jones is a guy I thought he was a 4th-round prospect. He kind of played like one, but at the same time didn't. What the hell do you do with that guy?
Jeez.
that's tough.
How many sacks do you think he's going to take in those first 3 weeks?
There's another one. Now, they drafted Andrew Thomas, who was my number 1 tackle coming out of the draft. But Nate Solder opts out. So now they're down a tackle, and they already didn't have tackles. So their offensive line, I think they did try. They did draft a bunch of guys, but it's not been good for a long time. The Giants and the Jets statistically had the worst offensive lines in football last year. 39% pressure rate. Not good. And Nate Solder opting out, while Andrew Thomas I think will be great. I'm not sure their offensive line's any better. So there's another wrinkle.
Giants fans,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. This has disaster written all over it. Khalil Mack alone may get 5 or 6 their week 2 matchup. He may have a feast that day, and he may kill Jones.
And I know people they look at the playoff matchups, but the early season stuff matters. You can't go out there with Daniel Jones the first 3 weeks and he puts up nothing. So what the hell do you do?
I'll just stay away from the Giants offense. Thank you very much. Don't want any part of that offense in my fantasy team. Not even Saquon Barkley. Go with that. That was a great pick, Trey. Thank you very much. Are you going to stick around or are you going to head out?
How much more do you got? You're pretty much done, right?
We've got 3 rounds of Fuck, Marry, Kill, and then who the fuck is that guy?
I'll stay for the FMK. I'll stay for that one.
All right. So for the first round of Fuck, Marry, Kill, we're going quarterbacks. We're going Cam Newton, Josh Allen, and Sam Darnold. Jackson, you want to start?
So we got Cam, Allen, and Darnold. See, I'll marry Josh Allen just for the sole fact, I like him and Darnold both, but Allen's got the better team around him. The Jets are awful. I'll one-nighter with Wow, that's tough. I'll go one-nighter with Cam just on the sole fact that he has Belichick as a head coach. And then kill Darnold because he's got Gase as a head coach. But it's more about Gase than it is Darnold. So
Gase of hell, as Andrew likes
the,
to call
the
it.
Gase of hell. I gotta copyright that. We'll make that into a T-shirt and
Put on a
sell it to
shirt.
Jets fans.
We could easily make that into a T-shirt. My pick's actually the same. I would marry Josh Allen. I think he takes a big step forward in terms of passing while keeping the rushing. If we're picking, like, do I think he's going to have a better real-life NFL season? I'll pick Darnold over Cam. But it's fantasy. Oh, boy. I got to go.
Oh, shit.
All right. I'll see you guys later.
All right. See you, man.
Thanks, Trey.
Yep.
Thanks for calling in.
Hang on.
Jay's trying to
Get
figure
out of
out
here.
Zoom.
Wait.
Here,
Exit this thing.
I can just remove you.
Okay. Yeah, do that
All right, see ya.
later.
All right. There we go. So my picks are actually going to be a bit different. Going marry Josh Allen from a fantasy perspective because he's he's a dual threat. He'll run for touchdowns, he'll run for a lot of yards, and he improved over the second half of the season last year. For one-nighter, I'll go with Sam Darnold because we can see another game like the Cowboys game last year where he just walks out of the hospital and just tears them to pieces. And, if he doesn't get mono, if he doesn't get sick again, he can be a great quarterback in spite of that Jets offense, in spite of the Gase of hell. And I'm going to kill Cam because there's a chance he's not even the starter. Like people don't want to accept the fact that there's a chance that Jared Stidham beats out Cam Newton. There's a very, very reliable chance that can happen because there's no way Cam Newton would have lasted that long on the open market if he was a definite upgrade, if he was what he was a couple years ago. There's just no chance he stays on the market and signs for nothing with the Patriots. So second round, we're going rookie wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk, Henry Ruggs, and Jalen Reagor.
Ayuk, Ruggs, and Reagor. Who did Reagor get drafted by? Remind me of that.
Eagles, Eagles.
Right, Eagles. Okay. Yeah, okay, I remember it now. So I may have to go with him as my Mary just because of yeah, I'll go with him because Eagles pass heavy offense and Carson Wentz, I think, much better quarterback than what people give him credit for. He's a hell of a lot better than Dak Prescott. I don't see why there's an argument there between those two. Who are the other two? Ayuk and Ruggs?
Yep.
I think I'll go with one-nighter with Ruggs and kill Ayuk. Although I like Ayuk, but
give some reasoning there.
I've got it's specifically with how players. I mean, I like Ayuk. It's just his speed concerns me for getting down on deep balls. I don't think, even though he's got size and he's got strength, I think he's going to be more of a short field kind of receiver than a big time guy. So from a fantasy perspective, I think that's where the difference maker is.
All right. Well, I'm going with Mary Ayuk because he is with the San Francisco 49ers. He's with Kyle Shanahan. They're going to find a way to give him the ball. Like, who the hell do they have at receiver? Deebo Samuel, he might miss a game or two. Outside of that, who else do they have that can really make a difference? There's a reason they traded up to draft Brandon Ayuk. There's a reason that they picked him in the first round. They know what they're going to do with him. They know how they're going to utilize him in their offense, and they know how he's going to be able to produce for them. And just on the Shanahan factor alone, I'm taking Ayuk. As for the one-nighter, it's a toss-up mainly because both players have speed, but I'm going with Jalen Reagor because I feel that he's going to be a very important piece to that Eagles offense because they need a deep threat. Yes, they have Deshaun Jackson, but he's old, and we have no idea how durable he's going to be this year. Last year was just a mess with him in terms of injuries. And so they picked Reagor because they needed his speed, and Carson Wentz has a big arm. He loves to throw a deep ball. He just wasn't able to last year because no one could run fast and get open down the field. Jalen Reagor can do that. He can walk in, he can produce, catch some long touchdowns, and all of a sudden he has 20 fantasy points. And Henry Ruggs, sorry, Alex, but Henry Ruggs going to kill because that Raiders offense, it's built on the run and the short game. Now, you can say that was because they didn't have a deep threat last year. And while that is very true, the whole Antonio Brown situation happened. We're just going to leave it at that. It happened. But Derek Carr, I like him as a quarterback. He's not going to turn the ball over. He's going to be consistent. He's going to take what's given to him. I don't know if he necessarily wants to throw the deep ball anymore because he hasn't been able to for the past couple of years because they haven't had a deep threat. He certainly can, but the question is, will he want to? Will he want to stand in the pocket for that extra second and a half, maybe take a shot to deliver a deep ball? We don't know. We will know when we see it, but we don't know right now. And then final round, going to be a trio of quarterbacks. We have Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees.
Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees. Wow. So from a fantasy perspective, I mean, Tom Brady is kill, definitely. So just it's figuring out the other two, and I think I'm probably going to have to go with Drew Brees to marry and one nighter with Matt Ryan. I know Matt Ryan has arguably more weapons. He's got Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, but that offense, just something about that offense. I do not trust the Falcons offense. I don't trust the Falcons as a team as a whole, even though Matt Ryan has had good years in the past. I just think that even though Drew Brees is coming off an injury, I think that Drew Brees is more consistent and he will have the better fantasy year.
So this is universal agreement. Kill Brady.
Yeah.
All right, I don't trust him. I don't trust his arm. I don't trust the Tampa Bay offensive line to be able to protect him because that's also what I feel an overlooked aspect of in terms of fantasy, the offensive line. Mm-hmm. You need a solid offensive line if you want to be able to produce in fantasy as a quarterback, running back, and wide receiver. Teams that have shitty offensive lines aren't going to produce consistently good fantasy players. Sure, someone might have a good couple weeks, but that's not going to last throughout the entire season. That and combination of age, Brady's get him the fuck out of here. I'm going to go with one nighter with Drew Brees for a lot of the same reasons in terms of arm strength. Like last season, he missed a few games, and I feel that helped him. But even late in the season into the playoffs, his arm was still shot. Like he's not going to be taking the deep shots down the field simply because physical limitations aren't going to allow him to. Yes, he has Michael Thomas, but that's only going to be good for the short and intermediate routes. And I'm going marry Matt Ryan because that Falcons defense stinks. He's going to have to throw them into every game. He's going to have to try to win shootouts and compete in shootouts. And he has Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. That's a good wide receiver duo. And I feel Matt Ryan could easily be a top 5 fantasy quarterback this year. So, do you have any thoughts before we head into our last segment?
No. Are you ready for the best segment ever in the history of ever?
Best segment in the history of fantasy shows. Who the fuck is that guy? Guy I never heard of, guy you're never going to draft. But somehow, some way, they will win you your fantasy league. Jackson, let's hear your pick.
All right, so I've already talked about how awful the Jets team is, and I mean they are bad from top to
Gates of
bottom. With
hell.
the Gates of Hell, yes, it was hot in Miami at one point, and now he's heating up the Big Apple. But the one shining light, the one oasis that you can find in the hellscape that Gase is the overlord in is Sam Darnold. It's easy. Like you said, he walked out of the hospital with his little vest on, and he's like, "Guys, I got this," and put out an amazing performance. He did that with really little to no receivers. Now he has even less of a receiver core. Outside of Crowder, really not an established 2 and 3 guy. So the guy that I've got for us today, wide receiver from the New York Jets, is Josh Malone.
College.
He went to Tennessee. He was actually drafted back in 2017 by Cincinnati, but just hasn't done anything since then. There was honestly like at least 4 guys that I could have chosen from this list. But one of them was a white.
Who the fuck plays receiver?
Yeah, one of them was a white slot receiver, and I was like, did
Trent
Scott
Taylor.
already do
Braxton
him?
Berrios.
That's
Braxton
him.
Berrios.
Yeah.
That's my theme. That's my theme going with the white slot receivers.
So if I see a white slot receiver on a team, I'm like,
Scott
has already either done it or he's gonna do
planning
it the
on
next time. Is planning on it exactly. But Josh Malone, yeah, like I said, Jets are garbage. No one beyond Crowder. May take a few weeks probably, but I think he'll get his shot. He's got good size, good frame, decent speed. And Cincinnati liked him enough to spend a 4th-round pick, which, like, isn't – it's, like, not high enough to where he's going to be a game changer, but it's not low enough where it's like, oh, we've got a pick. Let's just take this guy. And he's a veteran. He's been around in the league for a couple years now, so he's already got a leg up on the other who the fuck is that guy choices that I've done who have been rookies. So I think he brings experience. I think he brings hunger into a wide receiver core that is just strip barren, and that honestly most of them were probably working at the grocery store during COVID.
That's a great pick. One thing I'm going to say before I go into my pick, the reason there's been like a 2-week gap between who the fuck is that guys is because there have been a lot of players opting out. So I don't want to go through the trouble of writing a piece and then the guy opts out.
Yeah.
Because that happened because I have a spreadsheet going. And I was going to write about Demir Scott, but he opted out. So I just kind of scrapped that one. So
it's bad if a dude that we have on a who the fuck is that guy segment opts out. Because like no one knows who he is. It's like so and so dropped out, and everyone else could be like, who?
Yeah. But the deadline is August 6th. I want to say 3 or 4 p.m. EST.
Yeah.
So Friday or Saturday, it's gonna make a comeback. Anyway, for my pick, we're going with Marvin Hall. Can you guess what team he plays for?
I have no idea. I don't recognize that name.
Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions. Okay. And also, since Trey is not here, he's probably screaming at his monitor right now. Of course, I know who that guy is.
You guys are gonna be like, "Oh, I know who this guy is." Well,
yeah, easy.
You're not here right now, so it's fine. He was an undrafted free agent, 2016. Spent 2017 and 18 with the Falcons, 2019 with the Lions. He may only have 19 catches to his name, but in 2019, he had 7 catches for 261 yards and a touchdown. He averaged over 37 yards per catch, and that was with Matthew Stafford playing not even half a season. The Lions' receiving core isn't anything to write home about. You have Kenny Golladay, who he's good. You have Danny Amendola, who's an older slot receiver, and you have Marvin Jones Jr., who is getting up there in age. Marvin Hall, he's explosive. He's fast. He ran somewhere in the 4.2s for his 40-yard dash, I believe. And if you can line him up outside and just tell him, just go. Just go deep, Stafford will find him. And all it takes is a few big catches, and all of a sudden you're at 20 fantasy points for the game.
I like it. I like
All
it.
right. So, as we're wrapping this up, check out the store. Check out the Twitter, media_vendetta. Check out the site, vendettasportsmedia.com. Check out the
Check
YouTube.
out all the other all the other
everything.
YouTube shows. We got a ton of YouTube
We got
shows.
some backyard football. We got some backyard baseball. Got some 2K5, NFL 2K5. Going to specify that now.
So much fun. So much fun.
I'm working on some stuff. I'm working on trying to figure some stuff out. You might see a series from me in the near future, depending if I can figure out recording and all that. Check out the Twitch, where we occasionally play some games. Get to see me. You get to see. Come for the gameplay. Don't come for the gameplay. All right? Like, don't expect great things from me in terms of when it comes to playing video games.
No, we
Stay
suck.
for the banter. No, when I have an RPG, I'm good. But come for the banter.
There you go.
Stay for the banter. We'll talk about some stuff. We'll go on Madden rants while we're playing Call of Duty. It's great. Great time. We are going to be trying to stream more often. That's all we have now. Check out the store. Buy a shirt. If you want something cool in a shirt, let us know in the comments. We'll work on it. And until next time, thank you for watching.